So, is Norman Osborn the man in charge of trying to acquire all the PIM technology in Ant-Man and the Wasp? Let's talk about it. So, if you've seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, you probably have some questions and some of your own theories. Undoubtedly, many of them are going to be involved with the mysterious villain that we never see. Of course, once again, he is mentioned that there is a mysterious buyer who wants to get his hands on Hank Pym's technology, but we never find out who it is. Now, many people, including myself, obviously looked at this and said, okay, why are they being so coy with this? And automatically you start connecting some dots. Who could be paying so much money to these people? And who else is coming into the MCU that could potentially be the next big player, possibly even have his own phase dedicated to him? And automatically I think Norman Osborn, right? When you hear about Norman Osborn, you think one of the biggest Spider-Man villains. And Avengers Tower has been sold. It's probably not the Fantastic Four because they didn't have the rights or they weren't even working on it towards then. So it's got to be someone major to buy that giant tower from Stark. Norman Osborn fits that bill. And when you start talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, who else could be paying crazy amounts of money to a bunch of people to go after Hank and get this technology because he wants it? Once again, I think Norman Osborn fits that bill perfectly, and if you really think about it that way, having him start to get involved with all of these assets and start buying out territory and start getting his own technology because he wants to improve his own company and become bigger than Tony Stark, it makes a lot of sense, right? Go after Tony's rival, who is Hank Pym, because the history of those two characters is entwined with shady dealings in the past, as we know. So, you know, it kind of makes a lot of sense when you really think about it. And when you start connecting more dots, they never mention who it is specifically because they probably don't want it spoiled yet. And I'm gonna guess we're gonna find out more, maybe in Avengers 4, but most likely in Spider-Man Far From Home, because that would make sense if that's where you want your big revelation to be. Maybe at the end of the movie we see it's Oscorp, and that's, you know, who's been pulling the strings. And if you're setting up a future where Norman Osborn is pulling more strings around the MCU than just something like the Sinister Six, I think you can see which direction they're trying to go in. And maybe he doesn't even become the Goblin in this. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe it's something completely different, because we know that's what the MCU wants to do, because they don't want to retread old grounds that the franchises have already touched, and they've done the Green Goblin twice. But just by the sheer fact that they're not mentioning who it is, and due to the fact that we know that apparently Sony was asked by Marvel Studios not to use Norman Osborn in any of their spin-off movies, which is something they were planning on, just kind of all lines up, right? Maybe it doesn't end up being true, and maybe they get the Fantastic Four back and the tower goes to them, but in reality, I think we can all assume it's probably Norman Osborn.